Welcome back to A Life Partner TV. I am your host, Dr. Mario Torres Leon, and I am so excited today to actually have this particular topic that we're bringing to you. And the subject is a new language for men, or is it? And this is something that I'm so excited because over the past 25 years, if you're new to this community, I have been on a quest to find out what are those things that are essential for men and women to have an amazing relationship and not ending up in separation or divorce. And the fact of the matter is, I have dealt with many successful people in my life. I'm a physician by training. I'm a Harvard, Yale, and Columbia University physician. And as it turns out, this is something that has been a missing link for so many years. And it's something that continues to haunt particularly men. But along those 25 years, I've discovered that it's not just men. There's a lot of women as well who are searching to have a deeper degree of connection with the men, and they have not been able to actually establish that. Very often, when the relationship starts to grow apart and becomes very dysfunctional, it is not uncommon for the man to not understand what is it that is happening to the woman. It is not uncommon for him to start saying, I just don't get it. I have done everything. No matter what I do for this gal, nothing can actually please her. On the other hand, if you talk to the woman, she'll tell you, this guy is completely disconnected. I don't feel him, no matter what he does. This is like living in different planets. And these words are very common words that happen over and over and over again. And how do I know that? Well, in my own personal journey, when I was a single guy dating women, definitely that was something that I would experience. And then for 14 years being married, clearly there have been moments in my relationship where I've experienced things like this, to the point of starting way back in those 25 years, starting to invest in reading books, going to courses, going to retreats, and experiencing a lot of those things to be able to expand, to grow, to develop, and be able to be better in those areas of communication and connection. But a lot of times I would feel completely falling short from the goal, from truly being able to establish that connection. And not only that, the degree of discomfort that is experienced when this happens is beyond belief, to the point that after a while, when the initial newness of things runs away and that honeymoon period goes away, then you start to go into the daily things and you start to experience that degree of dysfunctionality, the lack of connection, the superficiality of the relationship, not being able to really go to places. And at some point it became evident to me that if something is going to change, it has to be over here. And if you haven't had that experience yet, that's a big tip right now. No matter what you're experiencing, if you continue to put it on the other side, whether it's you're a man and you're actually seeing your woman as the source of your problems or the issues that are happening, or if you're a woman listening to this and it's all just over there, it's always the guy, it merits a different kind of consideration. Is that really true? While there may be some elements of that are true, that the other person has some things that need to be worked on and so on, the fact of the matter is you are having your own experience independent of that person, and everything that you experience has to be perceived through your senses, internalized, chewed, digested for you to have the reactions that you have. So what was that missing link? And like I said, the title of the topic today is A New Language for Men, or is it? And this is the biggest discovery. Let me actually tell you a little bit of a personal story here of something that changed my life. So when I got married, and this is going back 14 years now, I came across a book that completely changed my life. And we all hear about, somebody who's telling us about the newest book that they read. It's like, oh my gosh, this was incredible, this and that. I've read a lot of different things in my life, in my career, and so on. But there's some books that for sure I would say they're tremendous highlights, but they're not a ton of them. And one of those books that without a doubt and in all sincerity changed my life is actually this book. And this book is called Nonviolent Communication by the late Dr. Marshall Rosenberg. If you have not read this book before, I am going to strongly suggest that you consider reading it. the degree of impact that that book had on me was so significant that still to this day, there's a lot of elements that have become completely innate and I've integrated into my language, the way that I express myself and what are the words that I select when I am actually communicating. What's really powerful about this book is that there's a couple of chapters in there that speak to something that completely changed my experience of myself and my experience of communicating with my woman and ultimately with everybody that I talk to. And those chapters, they speak to two different categories. One category, we're just going to call it the positive or the good words. And let's call the other one the negative or the not so great words or the bad words. And when I'm referring about the good or bad words, I'm not talking about cursing. I'm talking about feelings and emotions. The way that you experience anything, if I were to ask you, what are you feeling? You're going to use some words to assign to that particular experience that you're having, that you're feeling. For example, if you're feeling outraged, if you're really upset, right? You may say, I'm mad, I'm pissed. There's some words that you're going to use for that. If you're super excited, you may say, I'm elated, I'm just ecstatic. There are other words to be able to convey to the world, to the people that are listening to us, how is it that you're feeling? But the fact of the matter is, even though we have those words, and we don't really tend to think about using those words specifically in those lanes, what we tend to do is the following. And pay attention to this, because this alone, if you only take this piece out of this recording here with you, is absolutely a game changer. Typically, when people want to express how they feel about something, they will say something like this: I feel like. I'll say that again. Rather than just expressing what they're feeling by just one word, they will say, I feel like. And if you want some examples of that, it's actually very easy. Just turn on the TV, turn on YouTube and watch videos of people talking and so on. And you're going to see this expression, I feel like, completely being thrown around all the time. However, when we do that, we're not really going into what is it that is being felt. It's more of a judgment, it's more of an assessment of what's going on. Maybe you're throwing a blame at somebody, and I'll give you some examples. And then there's the flip side of this, which is what I'm advocating for and proposing to you, is if you're going to express how you feel, then go into the I feel blank. In other words, fill in the blank with what is the word that conveys the feeling. One of my major takeaways from Dr. Rosenberg's book had to do specifically with that. And that became a game changer, because when I would be, let's say, in the middle of a heated argument with anybody, could be a family member, my wife for sure, my tendency prior to having that discovery almost 15 years now would be to actually go into the assessment or the judgment sort of way of talking. For example, if I say to you, let's say that I had an experience and I'm feeling angry because let's say that the dishes were not done, and now I came from a long day and I like to come into, let's say, a house that is super organized with a super clean kitchen, and then suddenly I see that all the dishes are right there in the sink, and I'm like upset. Let's say that I'm really angry about that. And I go and I say, I feel like you should have done the dishes before I came to the house. Well, just feel into that comment for a moment, right? Into what I just said. What is the actual feeling? The feeling is I'm angry, I'm upset, maybe I'm disappointed, maybe I'm just super pissed that, this didn't happen. Maybe I'm feeling completely disregarded, completely neglected, that my needs were not being met, and nobody even cared to think about what Mario wants, right? On the other hand, I come into the house, I see the situation, I am visibly noticeably upset, my wife or whoever, let's say, can see me and see it on my face, it's all over me. And they ask me, what's going on? And then for me to go and say, I feel so upset. I feel upset. I feel angry. I feel dejected. I feel neglected. I feel disrespected, right? Now the communication is very different. I am conveying what I'm feeling. I am not assigning it to somebody else. I am fully immersed in my experience of myself. I am fully committed to checking in. I'm looking inward to see what is it that I am experiencing in this moment. What's boiling inside of me that has me in this state. That is bringing a complete and radically different way of being aware about my circumstance and not pointing fingers and just assigning anything to the other party. Very often, when there are challenges in a relationship between couples and so on, you're going to realize the more you start tuning in and listening to how the communication is being offered, brought to the other person, that the language that we're utilizing is conveying things that, as interpreted by the receiving end, are very different perhaps from what we intend to have them understand about our experience, about my experience or your experience if you're the one talking. And in those two particular chapters, which are chapters 4 and 5 of the book, there's lists of words that convey whether it's those positive or good emotions, and then the other counter side of that, the negative ones or the bad ones, if you want to call them that way. So many years ago, almost 15 years ago, I did something which is kind of, geeky and silly, but it actually helped me tremendously because I realized that I was completely deficient. Number one, in being able to approach it from the I feel blank as opposed to the I feel like. And the second thing was I felt the need to expand my vocabulary, to have new words. You see, my primary language growing up was actually Spanish. I was born and raised in Puerto Rico. And so here I am now in a relationship with a woman who was born here in the United States and doesn't speak any Spanish. And she's very aware of her emotions and how that is conveyed and being very sensitive to not being treated in a way that doesn't respect her and honor her. So whatever communication I was actually putting outside of me towards her that did not really invoke that kind of experience in her was not going to be well received. So think about how many times perhaps you, as you're listening to this, you've had communication with people recently. And it didn't turn out the way you wanted to without you knowing exactly, but what did I do? What could I have done it differently, right? And it's really interesting, the different studies that have been done about communication, there are 3 components to them. And interestingly enough, what we say, it's about 7% of everything in the communication, and the other 93% is pretty much what's happening inside of you between the gestures and the physiology, all the chemical reactions happening inside of you to be able to put that communication out. So there is so much to how we communicate that the tip of the iceberg is what's coming out of my mouth, right? So imagine how your communication and your effect, your impact will land and change the other person when the place you're coming from is one that is bearing in your whole body. What is it that you're feeling? Furthermore, as we develop this new language, and I said in the beginning, a new language for men, or is it? Well, we start to realize that yes, perhaps by nature of how men have been, through the course of history, hundreds of thousands of years, as we know ourselves as this species, Homo sapiens sapiens, we really haven't had much opportunities, as much as women did conventionally, to be able to develop an emotional language. So in some regards, we have lagged in that particular department. But it's not because we don't care. It's not because we don't want to learn. It's not because it's not important to us. It's just, it hasn't been something that was in front of us to take it. And the fact of the matter is, now here we are in the 21st century. There has been a tremendous social and emotional evolution on both men and women. However, this is a piece that is still missing. And we see it every day. All you have to do is just turn on social media and you're going to see how recordings of different people treating one another is just really, really off. And you can see how somebody's talking and the other person already starts to gesture and do all sorts of things. Meanwhile, the other person is talking and they don't even have the awareness that all of these things are being felt by the receiving end, with no awareness that a lot of the reactions that are being generated in the person listening have to do with the selection of the words that are being used, the context in which they're being used, the emotions with which they're being said. And all of those things create this new language that we're talking about. Dr. Rosenberg, in his way of talking about this work, he would call it the nonviolent communication. As I have developed my own work in a life partner, and I have looked at some of these pieces and reflected upon them, and being able to evolve it into areas that work particularly for the body of work here in the Alive Partner community, I like to think about it in a different way, and I call it differently, and I call it compassionate communication, or CC. Compassionate communication. You see, typically when people think about being compassionate, they tend to think about doing something for the other. You know, let's say somebody fell and then you just run to that person. Oh, I'm so sorry you fell. What can I do for you? Oh, you scraped your knee. Let me actually just take care of it and wash it, and let's put a Band-Aid on you and so on. It's all this outward way of caring for the other, which it's not a wrong thing. But when we're talking about compassion in this aspect, as we contemplate it and consider it in the Alive Partner community, I think of compassion as something that starts emanating from you and being experienced inside of you. What is it that seeing the other go through whatever is it that they're going is generating in terms of feelings and emotions inside of you? How do they make you feel? Being able to put name, last name to that experience is really, really important. See, I can't tell you how many times I've been in an argument with my wife and I have gone trying to fix the situation and make it better. And the feedback that I have received after saying whatever I said was something along the lines of like, please don't try to fix me. Please let me have my experience. In her experience of me, I am not being compassionate. All I'm just trying to do is just avoid whatever emotions are coming up for me. And in many ways, that is actually a true thing. You see, for men, since we're fixers, we don't like to see the person that we love, our partner, go through something that seemingly is tough and sad and painful for them. We just want it to go away. But there's a deeper underlying thing, which is it actually bothers us, right? I mean, we don't like to go through whatever is it that they're experiencing that can be really painful. So compassion really emanates and starts from you being aware of what is it that is coming up for you in that moment. Waking up that feeling body, which I talk about a lot, because that is an access point to your heart. It's an access point to being able to have a completely different experience with the other. And this form of compassionate communication that starts with you feeling what's coming up for you, and then being able to offer to the other as a big gift, what is it that is being felt as you experience them, without trying to take anything away from their experience, without trying to fix anything that is on the other side. It creates a completely different experience for them, that it is healing, and it allows to have an evolution, a growth in the way that both of you relate. And ultimately, it continues to feed you in terms of being able to feel more. And that feeling more allows you to be far more sensitive and evolve what kind of compassionate communication you're using. One of those geeky things that I did that I was starting to talk about was I took a couple of the pages from those chapters 4 and 5, I photocopied them and I put them right on my bathroom mirror. Why? Because I wanted to learn that vocabulary that I was alluding to. I wanted to be able to just learn those words so that I could find myself retrieving the words that felt correct and right for the experience, the physical experience, the emotional experience that I was having. And that became a game changer in my relationships and ultimately in my marriage. It has saved me in many instances from having gone into a much deeper hole of negativity and just separation from her, from myself, because I have been able to show up by speaking to what is it that is coming up for me. There is a very counterintuitive point here, which is mind-blowing, and it is that if you're a man and you actually do that on a regular basis, your woman starts to have a sense of appreciation for you that is not intuitive. You would think that you're being weak in that moment, you're showing your emotions and so on. Let me please remind you that you are, if you're a man listening to this, you are emotional. It lives inside of you. It's a nature that is part of you. And in some cases, we are more emotional than women can be. Pay attention to men and how they react. Just look at a football game or a basketball game. You don't think that there's a lot of emotions running there and how those outbursts can be so incredibly emotional? Yes, they are, right? So to think that we are not is really missing, to a large degree, a huge gift that we have that can be leveraged for the sake of loving somebody very deeply. And when we do that, women have a complete sense of appreciation for us in showing up. Now, for women who are listening to this, it is super important too to have your language. Just because you're a woman, that doesn't mean that you were born with this incredible knowledge of how to use the language. And that is not a criticism. It's just a fact, right? I mean, we all have our own senses of evolution. Some people are more advanced in that process. Some people are in a different stage and may need more support. But the fact of the matter is, if the couple grows together and have a common language, it will allow you to bridge a lot more the inherent differences from just being men and women. So I am sincerely hoping that today has been a bit of a game changer today for you in this topic of a new language for men, or is it? Now we know that it's actually a language for humans. Compassionate communication, as I call it here in the Alive Partner community. If you haven't yet, and this is the first time that you come across one of our videos, click on the link below so you can subscribe to our newsletter and start receiving the tools and tips that we put out every single day. We put something out that I would like to think, based on the feedback that we get, really brings change and is sincerely heartfelt. And I can't wait to see you next week, every Wednesday at 1:30 Mountain Standard Time, here on YouTube Live with Alive Partner TV. If you haven't and this resonated with you, click on the like button there and subscribe to it and share it. Imagine what impact you can have when you actually share something of this nature with somebody else. It could be the message that they were just really needing that day to enhance their lives and make it better. And if you missed it, you can also catch us on Instagram on Fridays. Every Friday, we do the Instagram Live at 1:30 p.m. as well. Spread the news. Let's continue to expand our Alive Partner community. And let's just stop this train going into separation, divorce, abusive relationships where we're just missing the point when a lot of these things are avoidable and completely reversible. Until then, I am Mario Torres Leon. Thank you for being here, and I can't wait to see you next time. Have a great one.